Hello, my name is Samuel George London and welcome to Comics for the Apocalypse. On today's episode, I speak to comic book artist and wonderfully incandescent human being Rosie Alexander about what comics she would take into the apocalypse. But before we get into it, today, Monday 8th of April, Rosie and I launch our colourful all-ages sci-fi adventure comic on Kickstarter called Saffron, Space-Time Academy Adventures. The story follows Saffron Sizemore, a 9-year-old girl who falls through a wormhole whilst on holiday and suddenly appears at the Space-Time Academy for Fundamental Representatives of Nexus, or, completely coincidentally, Saffron for short. Once at Saffron the Academy, Saffron the girl manages to enlist herself into the academy, and as well as training to become a space-time officer, she tries to find her way back home, but no one knows where or even when Earth is. If that sounds good to you, or you think your daughter, son, niece or nephew would like that sort of thing as a present, then be sure to search for Saffron on Kickstarter, or click the link in the show notes. Finally, if you do enjoy the show today, please leave a review for us on iTunes or whichever podcast service you use, as not only will it let me know that you liked it, but I believe that it helps others aware of the show as well. Now, without further ado, on with the show. Hello, Rosie Alexander.
Hi, Sam.
How's it going?
Good. I'm all good. I'm in the studio with my puppy at the moment, and he's just decided to wake up, so hurrah.
Hello. What's his name?
Leo. And he's quite a hefty beagle, actually. Like, there was only like 2 in his litter, so I think he got most of the milk.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So he's a strong lad.
Yeah, he pulls me around the park more times than I can say, and he nearly pulled my mum over the other day, which is quite funny.
Well, beagles are pretty strong, aren't they?
Yeah, I think Leo especially is. He's a hefty boy.
Brute. Excellent. Is that why you called him Leo?
No, we were
Because he's basically a lion.
We were tossing around ideas, and we thought maybe like Hiccup, because obviously nice. I love Pixar films and things like that. Yes. And I'm sorry, Leo. No, he's whining at me now. He is a bit of a brute though.
Legend. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on to Comics for the Apocalypse.
Happy to.
Yeah, and it's a real pleasure to actually connect with you voice to voice, at least.
I know, we've only ever sort of done secret messages through Twitter, so never had any actual vocal cords in the mix.
Yeah, that's right, because coming up fairly soon, we're going to be launching our own Kickstarter called Saffron.
I know, so excited.
Yeah, because we've been working on this, a few months probably?
Yeah, probably
now.
Since beginning of November, end of October, something like that.
Yeah. About then. And it was really kind of from the Little Heroes comics anthology, where you've done my short story called The Twin Paradox, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. Sorry, my puppy keeps like whining at me. I'm so sorry. Hold on.
It's okay.
Come here. Oh, yo. You get to have some in-depth puppy talk right now. Saffron. I'm very excited for it.
For the listeners out there, look out for Saffron coming on Kickstarter fairly soon. Just so the listeners who haven't heard of you before, what do you do in the world of comics?
I recently did a comic with Nick Bryan called The Little Deaths of Watson Tower, yes. Which was so fun to do. Honestly, I loved drawing the characters. It's filled
really
with fun. Thank you. It's filled with like skeletons, and I got to like design the characters for that, and it was really great working with Nick Bryan too. I realized we haven't actually had a voice-to-voice conversation either. I think
it's funny how the modern world works, doesn't it?
I know, everything is sort of just, message here, message there, email. I really enjoyed making that one too. And I think, secretly we might be making something new as well. So
Ooh,
yeah,
awesome.
I
So
don't think I
lots
can say
lots
much
going on
about
this year. Yeah, just yet, just
it.
yet.
Yeah, just yeah.
But for the listeners out there, where can people find you?
Well, I've got my website, rosielar.com. It's always a bit hard to say Rosielar. People don't know how to spell it, so it's just rosielah.com.
Cool.
And you can find like lots of character designs and some other bits and bobs on there.
Awesome.
But I also mainly go on Instagram, so you just type in Rosielar. Same again, you can find me, and I'm quite fun sometimes.
Totally fun. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And kind of just seeing your warm up sketches and stuff like that, because you post them, don't you?
Yeah. I love sort of doing sort of start to finish.
Yes.
I think a
Yes.
lot of the
Really
time as
good.
well. I mean, I love looking at that from artists I follow too. So I'm kind of like, oh, maybe you want to see what I do. So that's kind of why, I like the development of things, and I like to share that. So
Yeah, it's really, really good. So everybody out there, go check out rosielar.com and Rosielar on social media, Instagram and Twitter and all that jazz.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, let's get into it. So what type of apocalypse would you like to be in, or what type of apocalypse do you think you'd survive in?
When I first thought of that question, I have this sneaking suspicion I wouldn't survive at all. Honestly, I
Oh,
think
I
I
think
would be
you'd
dead
surprise
within like.
yourself.
I think it would be out of sheer luck that I survived anything. And if there was one that I survived, maybe it'd be like Moon. Although that isn't quite apocalypse. Like Moon with Sam
Yes.
Rockwell.
Yeah, where he's
When
on
he's
his
like,
own on a base in the moon.
yeah. Or maybe like sort of Zero Dawn Horizon. Like when they all go in the bunker and they're just in there. I could probably survive that, but it's never very successful, is it? When people are like locked away, they kind of
Yeah,
all go
well,
mad and kill each other.
confinement
So
is not conducive to staying sane, basically.
no.
And so let's go with that. And you're essentially
Okay.
trapped in a bunker.
Oh
Let's
God,
say it's a
yeah.
nuclear fallout. You're trapped in a bunker with a group of people. Before we get into our first question in regards to comics, what would kind of be your strategy for kind of surviving in there?
Um, Probably make friends with everyone first, so they didn't think I was going to try and like mug them off or kill them in their sleep.
Yeah.
And then try and secretly hoard as much food as possible. Because I mean, that's going to be the way that you survive, I think.
I'd say so. Long game, you know.
Yeah, and maybe like lock myself in a room in the bunker so they can't kind of get in.
Right.
Maybe.
At
But
some
then I'd probably
point.
go
At some
insane,
point.
so who knows?
Yeah. It's a tough one, but
It really
yeah.
is. Yeah, I have no faith in my survival skills. I feel like I'd just die straight away.
I reckon the human spirit is stronger than that. So I reckon you'd surprise
Yeah.
yourself, and yeah, you'd do well. I reckon. So
I'm glad that you have every hope for that.
I'm very positive and optimistic on people because I don't know, just people surprise you, in those kind
Yeah.
of live or die situations. So yeah, it's amazing. But one night in this crazy nuclear bunker that you've ended up in, the subject of comics comes up, and the first question that comes up is, what's the first comic you remember enjoying?
Oh, well, the first comic that I remember actually picking up, I was probably about 3, and I was in a supermarket and I was just wandering around. Although I'm sure I was delusional about it, considering I was 3 years old, but I'm sure it was like a Jurassic Park
Awesome.
comic with like peel off stickers, and you kind of could like show where the dinosaurs are going or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I was just really into it when I was 3. But other than that, I think maybe like Garfield. I Hate Mondays.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's well into that. And do you kind of remember any specific stories of Garfield that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I think it was always just the monotone conversations that the dude would have with Garfield.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is such an elegant, wonderful meal we're having, and Garfield's just eating, and like, what? I don't understand. I always really love the short, punchy comics like that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the traditional comic strips. It's just, oh, they're great and they're absolute classics. A funny story about Garfield actually
Oh
is
yeah.
that my sister, she was quite into the Beano, and there was a competition to do like just a 3-panel strip. You'd write a script for it, and then it'd be made in the comic,
Oh my
in the
God.
Beano, I think. And somebody entered this strip and won, and then they published it and
Yeah.
everything. And then my sister realised that it was actually a Garfield story that
Oh
somebody had just written down and
shit.
sent it into the competition and had won. And then, yes, but she ended up winning something because of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Somebody would just literally plagiarise Garfield and put it in the Beano.
See, that's the wonder of like pre-internet stuff, isn't it? Like
Yes.
nothing would go amiss these days. It would
Yeah.
instantly be posted online, and people would be like, "Oh my God, that's Garfield!" But back in the heyday, like you'd just be able to
Take
fob off
weeks.
anything.
Oh, pretty much, yeah, yeah. It's crazy, but so the first comic you remember enjoying is pretty much Garfield, and you still enjoy it
Yeah,
to this
yeah.
day.
I do. When I kind of had a little memory trip going online, like looking at some of the comics, and I saw the front cover, and I was like, "Oh my God, I remember this so much."
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it kind of just sent me down a rabbit hole of sort of spending about an hour just reading all these different comics from Garfield, and yeah, like secretly a massive fan.
Awesome. And then talking of kind
Yeah.
of funny comics, the next question that comes up is,
Mhm.
what's the funniest or comic that made you laugh out loud the most?
Oh my God. Kate Beaton's Hark a Vagrant webcomic.
Excellent.
That was another rabbit hole I went down the other day as well. It's all like online. And I think I remember really getting into it. It's probably like 15, 16. And my friend, Charlie, she's like phenomenal with sort of the premonition of what's good. Like she'll be ahead of the curve like all the time.
Ah, she's
And
one of
she's a
those people.
phenomenal poet too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
So I'd be like, oh, so what's that one? And she just like lay all these things on my lap, and I'm like, wow. But yeah, Hark a Vagrant. It's just so funny. I think it's probably the historical humor of it. I mean, the first comic that's on the website is about Duchamp. The guy who's like, I want to have a toilet seat, and it's not a toilet seat, and he was like such a great artist just to sort
Right.
of make a joke out of anything,
Mm.
but with a completely deadpan face.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like in the comic at the dinner table with his wife, and he's like, oh, I want to have a breakfast, and I'm going to eat it with a shoe. Oh, would you like a shoe? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous in the retelling, but so funny.
Oh, for
Like,
sure. Yeah. I went on there before we came on, and
oh
there was
yeah,
one because there's a random button on the website which I think it's
yeah,
a great
yeah, it's
idea
great.
for webcomics, particularly like this, not necessarily for kind of a continuous story, but for a webcomic like this, it's absolutely perfect. Where
Mm.
you've got kind of George Washington at the front of kind of like just a regular dinghy, and you've kind
Yeah.
of got like Ben Franklin and like some of the other founding fathers like just about to kick him into the sea, basically. And it's just stuff like that. It's just funny. So yeah, everybody definitely go check out Hark, a Vagrant
Yeah,
by Kate Beaton.
yeah,
Yeah, it's,
she's fantastic.
do you know what else she's done?
Um, my God, I'm awful. I don't. I've gone a complete blank. Um,
That's all good. You don't have to know absolutely everything. I'm sure if people go to the website, if you Google Hark,
Yeah, yeah.
a vagrant, I'm sure all of her stuff is up there because
Oh,
I'm
I
sure
feel
that she's
so awful. I'm
got
such a
some other
massive
stuff.
fan. I know nothing else.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Excellent. The next question that comes up is, what's the saddest or most upsetting comic that you've read?
Oh, um,
Yes, changing gears quite
I
a bit.
know, I know. It's like, oh, straight down to the sad.
Yeah.
Um, I I was looking through all the comics that I had in my house, like reaming through which ones I liked and didn't. I found a small one by Pascal Giraud or Girard, Girard,
I think
Pascal
it's
Girard.
Gerard.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at pronunciation. Called Nicholas, and I reread it last night, and it's it's so sweet, and it talks about sort of the loss of his brother when he was too young to kind of really understand what that meant. Um, and it's kind of like there's a scene in it where, I mean, it's really simply drawn as well. I'm a big fan of like poignant to the point drawings that don't have much fluff around them. And he's just like it says funeral, and he's just sort of stood there with his dad next to him, and someone's like, oh, I'm so sorry, and he's just kind of like twiddling his thumbs. He doesn't really understand. And then it's Christmas, and he's like, oh my God, I got all these gifts, it's amazing. And he's like, why aren't you happy? Like, why aren't you happy with me, to his parents? And it's kind of like that progression through his life. And I mean, the guilt of that, and kind of knowing you're too young to really understand it, but still having the guilt of that. And honestly, like it was, it chokes me up now. Like it's so sweet, and it's only like, well, like 40 pages long. It's not long at all. But I did see that he's republished it, so
Right.
I really think people should go and have a look at that.
So it's available now. That's great.
Yeah.
So that's Nicolas by Pascal Girard. Or it's
Yeah.
probably Girard. I
Yeah.
suspect, because there's no vowel after the consonant. My wife's French, so
Ah,
that's why
she should know then.
know bits of French and stuff.
Maybe you can just superimpose her voice, like pronouncing it right. Yeah.
There we go. I'll try and put that into the edit. I mean that's an incredible story, and it's very, very insightful. I lost my father when I was 8. You see, so I can kind of relate to that. In that, you are too young to really understand, and you don't really get it until you are older. I mean, at the time, you don't know any better, essentially, kind of through your teenage years, certainly, and then kind of when you do start to, properly understand kind of, death and things like that. It was probably around uni that I started to fully understand the kind of the loss of it all, almost. Just because you're meeting new people and they're kind of telling you about their lives and things like that. Because when you're at school, you don't really kind of ask about other people's families. You kind of interact with other people's families, but I don't know. Just at uni, it was really kind of it came to a point where I started to understand that and tried to understand it, because he took his own life, you see. And kind of you try and kind of understand that, so I can completely relate to that. And it's very sad, but it's also really important to kind of understand all of this as well. And I suspect it was quite a bit of closure for Pascal to write that book.
Yeah, I really think so. And especially like sort of republishing it too. I think having such a, even without a good response to the comic, I think knowing that it's well received as well, it just makes it okay, whatever you thought, even if you sort of felt guilty or, any of those feelings, we all know that it's okay to feel what you feel, and comics are the best way to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So changing emotions again.
Yes.
The next question that comes up is, what's the scariest or most horrifying comic that you've
Oh.
ever read?
Well, I put Black Hole by Charles Burns,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. I mean, it is scary, but I mean, I love horror. I love sort of, you know, horrific stories, despite how, bright and colorful and bouncy my artwork is. I love true crime, and I love sort of murder mysteries and historical horror and things like that. So Charles Burns, I mean, he draws in such a way that it's like otherworldly. He kind of makes sort of like a drug illusion on the page.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's more for the gory sexuality of Black Hole that I really love it. And plus, it's such a nice book as well. I mean, us comic people, we love to have a good book to feel. It's all about sort of the tangibility of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I also thought of as well, like what I really enjoyed was From Hell by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell. Yeah, massive
Classic.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go anywhere without sort of recognizing that.
Yeah.
But it all like the whole idea of like what horror really scared me, what really sort of sent me chills throughout my life. And have you ever seen Saturn Devouring His Son by Goya? It's a painting. It's one of the black paintings.
Tell you what, I hadn't, but I googled it.
Yeah, right.
And I'm actually horrified.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
And that is actually part of his series of the black paintings. Right. And so there's probably about like 8 or 10 paintings, I think, and they're all like that. And they were all done in his later life, and all done on his walls, like they're murals. They're not like, sort of a painting to hang. And it was when he was starting to lose his sight and he wasn't seeing anyone. And so all these paintings were just for him. That's the more terrifying part of it, I think.
Ooh, isn't it?
Yeah, he was just living in this kind of, I'm getting goose pimples now.
Totally. I mean, that is horrifying.
Yeah.
That, he's just kind of painting these crazy, weird things. But I guess kind of in a way, it's, as you were saying before, you just got to get down. You can't help but feel what you feel. And if that's how you feel, I guess, and as long as he's not harming anybody, then whatever.
I mean, I can't think towards his actual lifestyle other than the fact that he was doing great, like happy paintings, and then suddenly he started to lose his sight and his hearing, and that's all he did. So, hopefully he didn't harm anyone. I mean, there are definitely other artists who did, but
yes, there are. But hopefully he didn't. But you can kind of understand that after kind of almost a lifetime of having your sight and drawing, and
the celebration of it too. I mean,
and then
when you love the arts and you love music, and for sight and sound to go, like that must be sort of your own inner turmoil itself. It must be horrible.
Brutal. Absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
So the next question that comes up in the bunker is what's the most meaningful comic to you?
Oh, people are going to slap me silly for this. Cardcaptor Sakura by Clamp.
Awesome.
Right? So good, so good. And I'm not embarrassed to talk about it because seriously, like this comic, this anime, manga, like it's been a part of my life since I was such a youngling. Awesome. And it was the first real organic look into anime, and it was all created by women. Like,
awesome.
Even as a kid,
that's empowering, right?
Yeah, even as a kid, I had such a strong sense of like female empowerment. So I was like, oh my God, it's 4 women making this art and it's so beautiful. And they've got all these lyrical stories and wow. And it's like tarot cards and magic. Like I loved it. And I mean, I have to have a good sort of artistic nod to it too, because I mean, that's the first step that I definitely is why I love drawing the kind of work that I do now. I mean, I still have like sort of card captor artwork books on my desk. Like I've got them here.
Great.
And you know, it's why I love like art, I think. And
That's brilliant.
yeah. And you know, like people across the globe love it too, so it's
Oh,
nice to
totally.
share that with everyone.
Absolutely. And for anybody out there that hasn't come across it, kind of what's the story, like the setting of
Oh, it's
everything?
great. It's like a 10-year-old girl, and she discovers this magical book called like the Clo cards or the Clow cards, and it's like a whole deck of like tarot cards, and she accidentally releases them into the world, and she has to just go and sort of collect them. It's a bit like Pokemon, but like
Mm.
I'm gonna say a better version of Pokemon. I
Oh, the internet
know.
just exploded. Uh-oh.
I'm gonna be shot like in a month, you know, very, very soon. But I mean, it's just the creativity of it, like all these different sort of monsters and
Yeah.
beautiful creatures that she has to go and find. And there's such a wonderful sort of dynamic between all the characters too. And I mean, even for then, like sort of the social dynamics were amazing. I mean, they kind of did like a English version of it, like an American English anime version of it, which only had like 27 episodes of like the anime, when actually there's like 73 episodes, and it's all about how you know, people fall in love, and it's all about sort of growing up, and you know, Japanese animes and manga, they kind of they love understanding that like in a
Yeah.
different way than we do. We kind of
They don't
shelter.
hold back,
Yeah, they don't.
basically, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, um, the whole side of like manga too, like it's fascinating, and it's so like bizarro and creepy. And I mean, I love all the movies that have come out. I mean, these are the things that I would watch when I was younger, like, you know, Perfect Blue and Akira and all these like really bizarre films. And it's kind of like my interest in films now. It was very much the core of that is what I love now. I mean, have you seen a bit of a leap, but have you seen Enter the Void?
Into the Void. No.
It's by Jasper No.
Okay.
And honestly, I mean, it's a drug trip of a film.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's the best like first person visual like cinematic experience that I've ever seen.
Mm.
But it's kind of like that is so much in anime these days too. You know, I love that link between them, sort of experiencing and showing loads of artwork. Sorry, can you hear my puppy right now? He's like,
Yeah, I can. It's all good.
oh,
Don't
it's
worry.
so.
Just adds to the atmosphere, you know. But yeah, so Card Captor Sakura. I definitely remember the anime when I was in my teenager years, actually, probably. And yeah, I just remember it kind of being vivid. Definitely.
Very bright and colourful and lots going
Yes,
on.
absolutely. And so that's what really kind of set you off on this journey, do you
Yeah,
think?
yeah. I mean, there were always like comics sort of strewn around the house. My brother was a big fan of Judge Dredd, so I love that too.
Awesome. Mm,
Um, and it goes hand in hand with all the weird films that they'd make me watch when I was a really young person as well.
great.
I've got a lot of older siblings, so I was like the youngest. So when they were watching films and I kind of waddle downstairs, they'd be like, "Oh, just stay and watch this." So we'd be watching like Nightmare on Elm Street when I was like 4,
Mm.
um, and you know, like yeah,
It
it's
had an impact.
yeah. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. I love all the things that I love now. You know, I don't feel like I was destroyed in any way. Um, I'd like to I like weaving all that into the work that I want to make. You know,
Great.
it's all a big influence.
Awesome. And considering it sounds like you've got quite an eclectic view of the of comics and TV and everything. What's the most underrated comic that you've read?
Ah, I think I'll go with French Milk by Lucy Kinsley.
Right.
Yeah, she's like an American artist, and she's done loads and loads of like comics since then. I follow her on Instagram and kind of a bit of a stalker, really. But the main thing is like no one has ever seemed to have read it. Have you? Did you ever?
I actually haven't. No, not yet.
Yeah,
I did look at it beforehand, but yeah, I'm yet to read it.
yeah, I see anyone I talk to about it, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And I remember being at uni and being like, oh, you should read this. And they'd be like, what? So the amount of times I lent it out, I think it's been through so many hands. So lots of DNA on that. But yeah, I mean, it's such a joyous travel diary. Hold on, I'm just popping my puppy down. I've been holding him for a while. Yeah, and the artist draws in such a free, sort of loosey-goosey way, and it's so wonderfully conversational as well. Like it won't blow your mind, but it's just severely undermentioned, really.
So what's the setting with that?
Oh well, she it's like her first trip to France because her mum is French. Yeah, so she goes visits, and it's just like a sort of a travel diary about her experiences and the people that she sees, and it's kind of like interwoven with like photographs as well. And yeah, it's like going on an adventure with someone. Even if you're like alone in your house and you're reading it, you're like, oh yeah, I'm traveling with a friend right now.
Nice.
And I mean, all of Lucy Kinsley's stuff is just amazing and so conversational and enlightening, and she sees the little things that we all see, you know. So yeah, I thoroughly recommend her. Like top notch. She's amazing.
Wonderful, and that's French Milk. For any listeners that didn't catch it the first time, so Google that and I'm sure it will come up.
Yeah.
And so the conversation comes on to the big question, which is for you, what's the best comic of all time?
Oh God, I feel so stumped on this. Like I feel like I haven't been able to read as many comics or know enough about like the world yet to really answer that. I mean, best comic. It's such a hard question to answer.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
It really is. I mean, what would yours be?
Mine's top secret for now. I don't
lockdown.
I don't reveal that for the time being. I will do one day, I think. But yeah, and as kind of people have said in the past, if you ask this question at different points in your life, it's going to be different. The answer. So, don't feel as though this is going to be your hard and fast answer for all time. But it's just up to this point in your reading experience of comics.
Well, I really loved Spinning. Did you ever read that one?
Spinning?
Yeah.
No. Go on.
Hold on. Bear with me a second. I've got it right here.
Great.
Right. Yeah, I'm back now. Yeah, Spinning by Tilly Walden.
Right.
It's fantastic. Seriously. I mean, I didn't mention it in any of the other questions because I was kind of like, it doesn't really fit into any of them. But it's a little bit like French Milk in the way that it's kind of an in-depth, just looking into sort of how someone lives, but it's kind of like a conversation on this girl who's like an illustrator, but also like an ice skater. Yeah, and she illustrates it in such a beautiful way. I kind of feel like people should just go and read it without me having to like say much more about it, because it's a memory lane for someone. And I always really, I like people's stories. I like people's memories, especially when it's, real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just no help there at all.
No, it's all good. So it's called Spinning.
Yeah.
Sorry, who was the artist?
Tilly Walden.
Tilly Walden.
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, definitely go check that out and see if it's your bag. That sounds really, really interesting. And it's just it's really the art that jumps out to you with that, as well as the fact that it obviously has a lot of base in reality?
Yeah, it's just it's really real. I think that's probably like the most apt description for it, you know? And when you're reading a comic, you just want to sort of be transported, and knowing that it's someone's personal story, you know, however hard or whatever it is, you can kind of, I don't know, you learn a little bit more about yourself, I think. And it's that quality that I like in a comic, I think. Yeah.
Excellent. That's definitely a good reason to make it the best comic of all time.
Yeah,
That's great.
I can be eloquent when I want to be.
Yeah, totally. You did it. So the next question that comes up is: so if you could only take one comic from your list, which would it be?
Oh, Sakura Card Captor, hands
Awesome.
down. Like seriously, I would just be ogling that the whole time. Happy Larry. Like honestly, I would. That's my vote.
Awesome. So you've got that. How big is that?
It's actually quite hefty.
Yeah, I was going to say it must be big.
Yeah,
I mean, most mangas are, but
yeah. I mean, when it was first published, it was all just in like really tiny, skinny, sort of standard format of comics. But yeah, when it's squashed down into an actual manga, it's like nice hefty book. So at least it's a nice long read. You know, for the Apocalypse.
It's going to pass the time and everything as well, isn't it? Awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're coming back to reality a bit here in your nuclear bunker.
Okay.
In that, you know, what weapon, tool, or useful item would you like to take into the apocalypse with you?
Considering I don't think I would survive the apocalypse.
Yeah. We're giving you every chance here.
Oh yeah. Well, if we're gonna go back into sort of the lucid reality of Apocalypse, I genuinely wrote down Harry's invisibility cloak. Like that's what's going to save you, right?
Sick.
That, or like, I don't know, some water. I feel like that's going to take you pretty far.
Yes, definitely. Being able to hide and everything.
Yeah.
That's great. So like you could use that to kind of, you know, hoard food.
Yeah, and evade people too. Like, you know,
totally.
What if in this bunker the like zombies or something comes in? I'm pretty safe. Like, you know,
very safe. Absolutely.
Or I could just do some really great magician tricks
as well. You know, you could entertain the kids. You know, really kind of put on a show.
Yeah, entertainment value tenfold.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of, you know, you gotta pay with like 2 sandwiches to get
yeah.
Or something, so you can hoard even more food.
Like, where did she go? Oh, who knows? Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on Comics for the Apocalypse, Rosie.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it really has been. It's been nice to finally properly catch up and
have an actual conversation.
An actual conversation. Find out more about you and kind of insights into how you came to be the artist and creator that you are. And I think it's really interesting to see everybody's choices and kind of particularly kind of the question of most meaningful comic. And kind of, you know, how that leads people into the area of comics that they're in, because comics is so vast. It's really interesting to kind of see the genesis and kind of the development of it all through people's choices. So thank you so much. And just for the listeners one more time, where can people find you?
Just search for me on Instagram, Rosie La, or on Twitter, Rosie La Studio, because I like to sound fancy. Or obviously just my website, which is www.rosiela.com. And yeah, I mean, some new stuff should be coming on there pretty soon, and obviously our comic together, so awesome. That's exciting.
Very.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Because Kickstarter can be fickle, but I'm you know, quietly confident that we're going to make it, and
it's going to be stylish. I think it's going to be cool.
Very stylish. That's all down to you. So yeah, you've done a sterling job with everything that I've seen. So it's absolutely fantastic. Rosie, thank you again so much for being on Comics for the Apocalypse. Hopefully I get to see you at a con soon.
Wicked, yeah, that would be awesome.
Have you got any planned for this year, by the way?
Well, I really wanted to go to the one that the chap mentioned in your previous podcast.
True Believers.
Yeah. Like, because Nick Bryan's going to that as well. I know you going to that. Like, but I'm just too far down south and I can't get up there. So I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a mission from Ipswich, right? You're
Yeah,
kind of
it's
based, right?
quite a trek.
Literally the other side of the country, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to, but I mean, unless I could like fly there, or something, that would be,
private jet,
Yeah,
helicopter, whatever. You got a dream.
Yeah.
Definitely. Fantastic. Well, hopefully I'll see you at one sooner rather than later. And we can actually have a face-to-face interaction.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks again, Rosie, and I hope to see you soon.
All right then. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Thanks again to Rosie for being on Comics for the Apocalypse. I had an absolute blast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review for us on iTunes or whichever podcast service you use, as not only will it let me know that you liked it, but I believe that it helps others aware of the show as well. And if you'd like to check out Rosie's work or follow her on social media, those links are in the show notes, along with all of our own links to the various areas of the internet. And lastly, as long as the apocalypse doesn't come to pass in the next week, I'll see you next Monday. Bye for now.